Well, welcome everyone to the 12th edition of the RORC Caribbean 600, and we are live at English Harbour in Antigua, and here on Fort Charlotte, and in the lead up to the start of the 12th edition of the RORC Caribbean 600. It's a beautiful day, typical Caribbean weather, and we have the race team all set up, ready to fire the warning signal for the first start in the RORC Caribbean 600. So 10 minutes to the start, and we have a fabulous fleet of boats, 73 teams, nearly 700 sailors from 37 countries, and here to do this challenging and very popular 600-mile race in beautiful warm conditions. Blue sky, blue sea. I mean, it just couldn't be any better. As we move around, we pan round to see the fleet. It's a real interesting gathering of boats. As I said, 73 boats with a good fleet of very, very competitive multi-hulls. One of the interesting things is that you can see from the pictures is that the trade winds are very light. There's about 7 or 8 knots out there at the moment. It's slightly different to what we've had in previous years. The last 2 years we've had good strong trade wind conditions and records have been broken, and of course this year for the first 24 hours at least the boats are going to have to navigate and negotiate light winds. And with me here today is Wouter Verbraak from Sevenstar Yacht Transport, who are supporters of the race. Welcome, Wouter. I think these conditions aren't what we were hoping for, I suppose, in terms of television coverage, but slightly different to what we've seen in the past. So can you sort of give us an update on where you see the forecast and maybe what's happening to cause the light winds that we're seeing now?
Yeah, sure. So basically, what happens quite often in the winter months in the trades is that the cold fronts from the big low pressure systems come down to the trade wind area and disturb the wind pattern. So what we have seen over the last couple of days is that indeed one of these big fronts is moved down, and so instead of the 15 to 20 knot normal trade winds, we're seeing this light wind along the Caribbean islands. So actually, if you see here on the shot, there's some funneling here locally, which gives probably about 8-10 knots. But the expectation is that further away from the islands, the wind could be very light, as light maybe as 5 to 10 knots, and that's all to this front disturbing the trade.
So, Wouter, you think that obviously the weather is so important about who's going to win the race, and we've seen in the last couple of years that the big boats has been favoured the big boats because of the strong winds and really quite tough and demanding sailing conditions. But today is quite different. I mean, it's calm. It's going to be about looking for wind. It's going to be about setting the boat up for sailing quickly in light airs. And how much do you think these boats will have changed their sort of moding to suit the conditions they see?
Oh, vastly. I think the first 24 hours of this race are going to be crucial because basically up until tomorrow morning we're seeing these light winds. So on these big trimarans, the mod 70s, you can really adjust the rake on your dagger board, so the way you put them into the water, so they will be playing with that. In addition, there's also been some sail choices that the teams will have to make, and these days the Code Zeros, the big masthead overlapping genoas, they're very popular, so I think we'll see a lot of them.
And so then when we come to the islands as well, there'll be local things that go on that will not necessarily happening around the weather pattern, but local conditions they will have to adjust for.
Yes, so these Caribbean islands, they're old volcanic islands, and some are still quite active, and tall, and so they influence the general wind greatly. So this can be good because there's parts around the islands where the wind gets accelerated, just like we can see here in the starting area. Other areas though, you have to go through the lee of the island with very light winds, and I think that's what the teams are going to be most worried about, is to avoid the lees and get through them in good shape.
Well, thank you, Wouter. I think more about the weather as we go into the start sequence. As I said on my introduction, we've got 73 teams from 37 countries. It's a very popular race. We are missing some of the superstar boats that we've had in the past. The Maxi 72s are not here. Rambler 88 is not here, past winner. But we do have Wizard, the Volvo 70, and I know that you've sailed these Volvos in the Round the World race, Wouter, and I don't think these conditions are best suited for Wizard to regain her trophy.
No, so these Volvo 70s and Volvo 65s that are here, they're really built for stronger winds, reaching conditions, and they're a bit sticky in this light wind scenario that we're seeing here. Normally when you're doing ocean racing, you can really avoid these light winds and just stay in the stronger winds, but when you start in light winds here, that's it.
Great. So that's the preparatory signal for IRC 2, IRC 3 and the CSA rated boats as well. I mean, it's a big fleet. There's 26 starters in this fleet. One of the boats that you can see very close to us is Taz. That's Bernie Evan Wong. He has competed. He's probably the only person here who's competed in every race. I don't think he's finished every one of them. I broke his mast in one and had an injury in another, but Bernie's a local dentist and a great favourite of all the locals, and they'll be cheering him on to win. We have the winner of, I think he's a 4 times winner of the ARC, Ross Appleby, in Scarlet Oyster, which is an Oyster 48. I don't think the conditions are going to suit him very much, but he'd like a lot of strong winds. And you can see Ross Appleby coming down the line. So 4 minutes to go. They're already setting up, preparing for their start line. Now, Wouter, we're going to bring in Louis Habib as well, who's our roving reporter. But Wouter, you can see the boat setting up at, I mean, Oyster 48, Scarlet Oyster is the closest to us, and no doubt she's going to take advantage of the bias of the line, I would imagine.
Yes, and so the key thing in these light wind conditions is to keep the boat moving all the time. All these yachts take about a minute to accelerate, and so with a minute to go, you really need to find your spot. So at the moment we still have some more time, and people are just trying to set up their position along the line. At the moment it looks like it's pretty even, and it's not really decided where people are going to start yet.
No, but it looks like inshore, I mean, there's 2 factors here for inshore, isn't there? Not only just the bias of the line, but there's a little bit of current caused by the strong easterlies, and they're sailing into the current. So to get close inshore is going to help them. There's also usually, I've sailed here a few times, there's also usually a left-hand shift inshore. So hopefully that will realise. But as we know, if you get too close inshore, you run out of wind as well. So I'm sure Ross's timing is run to take advantage of this.
Yeah, so now we can see everybody just juggling for position, and now it's all about getting this last 20 seconds right to accelerate. So Ross Appleby here in the red boat down the line, and JPK also going with him.
Okay, we're in the final minute, folks, and as I said, there's 26 starters in this, and it's a very competitive fleet. Some boats keeping away from the we're standing above the Pilots of Hercules, and for sure the they've set a very good line, the race committee, but there's a little bit of favour down here inshore, coming up to 30 seconds. 30 seconds to the start. Ross is weaving around in front of us here. There's a few boats in the middle of the line and 1 or 2 at the far end, so it's evenly spread. It'll be interesting to see how Ross managed to get out of this, but I believe he'll tack across and have a nice healthy lead. So
it's all about acceleration here along the shore, and you can see Ross here nicely setting up. That's the gun.
That's a start, clear start, says the race committee, as this is for IRC 2, IRC 3 and the CSA class. And it's a very even line, I have to say. It's not easy for Ross to cross. There's not as much left-hand shift as we expected, but he's got good speed. And to windward of him is a Virgin, looks like a USA boat actually to windward of him. Remember, it's an Oyster 48, this red boat, and they're going into attack. And I'm sure he's going to be quite nervous about crossing the rest of the fleet. Yeah. But a really nice start from all of them. Some boats in the middle of the line have tacked onto port, and Ross Appleby, Scarlet Oyster, is just going to be working hard to accelerate, and hopefully he can cross the rest of the fleet. This is nervous times for these boats down on the inboard end here. The USA boat is now tacking, and to windward of him is an X49 who's also tacking.
Yeah, so that's a close situation here, and this is what we're going to see a little bit here up the coast, because everybody still is trying to use this acceleration along the shore. And you can see Ross Appleby actually in Scarlet Oyster got a nice left shift that we were talking about earlier, so he will make some nice gains here inshore.
Actually, I have to say, hats off to him. He's done a brilliant job. He's crossing the fleet, and he's going to have a really nice lead. I bet he feels very, very good about himself. And it's interesting. I know this is a 600-mile race, Wouter, but having a good start just sets the tone for the people on board and how you sail the boat, and really does give you a lift, doesn't it?
And especially in these light wind conditions, it's not that easy to crawl back. So getting into the lead and being able to pick your lanes here in the first 4 miles of the beat is going to be really important. And you can already see the difference between the boats here on the left hand side and the fleet on the right hand side. The left side of the fleet has more wind and a better shift, so they are going more directly towards the next mark. So this is going to be really important, even if you have to invest a bit and maybe lose a few miles. It's really important to get here to the left.
Well, we have to deal with helicopters as well. That was pretty close. It is light. They are moving nicely. You can see even from this height, it's quite shifty. So there'll be shifts to make. But this is about making sure that the boat's got full power. Power in the head sails, power in the mainsail. Get your weight as low as possible, because it's quite choppy. The boats are moving around out there, and trying to keep the boat moving fast as quickly as possible.
Yes, I think that what you touched there on the waves there, Eddie, and I think that's really important. Even though the trades have shut down because of this front, that doesn't mean that the waves that are being built up from across the Atlantic are going to be down as much. So it's a really tricky conditions, and it's about a powerful setup to get through those waves and keep the boat moving.
But Wouter, this is a fabulous place to sail, isn't it? You've done it, Sailing Week many times. So have I. I've done this Caribbean 600 quite a few times. I can see now why so many boats. 95% of the boats have come here from all over the world. The furthest travelled is Lot 99. She's just ended a circumnavigation. and she's the largest, one of the largest boats in the fleet. And she decided, well, we're here, let's do the RORC Caribbean 600. So it is sublime conditions. They sail around 11 islands, go as far north as St. Martin, and as far south as Guadeloupe, and basically navigate 6 islands. Now, I was up here the other day and we were doing a little photo shoot, and we saw whales in the distance. Yeah. And I know that this is the time of year that the whales come through, and I would imagine the helicopter's picking off a few shots. But yeah, it's sublime, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely sublime and scenic. While we're standing up here, I can spot sea turtles. You know, you can do some swimming here in your prep before the race. And I think that every island is different, and it's so many corners in the race course. So it's not just busy times for the trimmer drivers, but also for the foredeck crew to make sure you have the right sail up all the time. So it's a nice varied course. I think it's a really good time of year to get your crew together and get sharp for the season to start in other places of the world.
Well, we are coming down. The countdown now is for the start of IRC Class 1 and the Class 40s. So that's the preparatory signal for IRC Class 1 and the Class 40s. And there's 4 Class 40s in the race. Upsailing, which is raced by Morgane Poupon, which is the daughter of French legend Philippe Poupon. So she's probably grown up with salt in her veins. And the others, there are in fact 2 are French, one is German, BHP, which is Arthur Hubert, and Arndt Bruns on Iscarine, which is a Phenol Conch design. And in IRC 1 we have some interesting boats. We've got the on-deck perennial charter, which is Spirit of Juno. It's a FAR 65. We have a boat from Canada here in this group, basically come all the way from Canada. And they've done the race before, and from France we have Albator, which actually would do reasonably well. I think this is an NMD 43. Now, if this is going to be really well sailed, there's some great sailors on board. We've had a previous Fastnet race winner, and the boat's owned by Philippe France. So that could do reasonably well in this sort of light air conditions.
Yeah, and don't forget they are normally mat based, so they're very well versed in these kind of lighter conditions. Also, the boat is set up for more mat weather. So I think if you look at this fleet in IRC1, it's quite competitive. Don't forget boats like Pata Negra, a very frequent RORC visitor. They have some very good sailors on board, and I think here the boat to watch is the Test. Everybody has to keep an eye on that smaller but very slippery Rykel 37.
The Rykel 37 sailed by
it's our friend Bernard Evan Wong.
Of course, Taz. Yeah, could this be Taz's year? Well, look in the weather forecast. Also, you said that it's quite possible the next front is coming through by Thursday, and that will hurt the little boats, won't it?
Yes, exactly. So it's just to see how this is all panning out. At the end of the race, the next front is again going to disturb the trade. So you really want to be tucking into the finishing line here by Thursday morning. Otherwise, the wind is going to go down, and you have a challenge to beat the others.
Okay, 1 minute to the start of IRC Class 1 and Class 40. So, who's your favourite here then, Wouter? Have you got anyone that you think that's You mentioned Pata Negra. They've done a lot of offshore racing. That boat's really worked hard over the years.
Yeah, Pata Negra could be a little bit heavier and wider. You know, it typically likes a little bit more wind. So if I have to pick one, I would put my money on Albator or Taz in this class.
What about Whistler? Whistler J121. I mean that.
Yes,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, slightly narrower hull design will do them favors.
Water ballast? I think they got water ballast.
Yeah, so they can be light when they don't need the water ballast, and then fill it up when they need it.
Now. 10 seconds to go, and there's 2 boats quite close. One very close to the line. Ooh, can you focus in on that one here? One with the yellow stripes.
Over Ocean Racer.
Recall, please. Recall.
Canada 1. CAN 1213.
Recall, CAN.
Hermes, Ocean Racer, Morgan Watson, which is a Pogo 12.5. Is over the line, I'm afraid.
Yeah, our Canadian friends were a little bit eager there in the setup. The problem was they were a little bit in a difficult situation with the boat below them. So now they will have to try and turn back without interfering with the other boats. That's really important rule in sailing.
Wouter, we know this is a long race. In fact, it's been a very close start, isn't it? And certainly more boats at this end of the line than we saw in the previous race. Some class 40s down here, and our ocean boat from Canada has gone back. Some of them are tacked off. Quite nice breeze out in the middle of the course over there on port tack. I don't know I can't see who that is.
Yeah.
Looks like could that be Pata Negra out in the middle? Yeah,
indeed. And you know, here so you can see how changeable the conditions are. And yes, you in general would like to go close to the cliffs here, but sometimes you get these lighter winds, as the 2 inshore boats have here experienced. So it's actually the middle of the line here that came out best. They are crossing the boats, the 2 boats that started all the way to the pin. They now have the clearing to go further left, where we can actually see good pressure. So middle of the line start looked to be favored on this one.
Yeah, obviously, you know, it's tricky, shifty, pressure as well. The blue sailed boat is Maiden, which is the refurbished all-female boat sailed by Tracy Edwards. And what's interesting, they're using the sails they raced, the round the world race in the late 80s.
Yes, and you know, I can tell you that was an 89 Whitbread. That was sort of my inspiration for becoming a navigator. And the Dutch boat that they were racing had a really good navigator. We have the helicopter zooming around us, so I spoke to them earlier yesterday, and they're looking forward to a little bit more wind. But you know, looking at how they're going, that's not a bad start for Maiden either.
Yeah, I had a look at the boat, and they've done a lovely job of refurbishing it. But you know, interesting now that the guys in the middle of the line have tacked over onto starboard, and of course it seems like it's less pressure out there and more pressure inshore. So it's really quite tricky, Wouter.
Yeah, a bit of snakes and ladders here in the first even half a mile of the course. So you really have to be on your toes. And of course, you know, the next group is getting ready for the next start, and they'll be looking very keenly to what is going on here. I think if you look, the first guys here coming off the line might not have been in favourite, but if you look now, the top left here is really again strong with that left breeze and more wind coming. So the yachts that are coming in from the right are really making some losses to the left-hand boats.
Well, interestingly, if there's a blue boat in the distance there that you've got, I've never heard of it before. It's a Mobile 53, the blue hull. It's got a beautiful. She wasn't at the pin, but she tacked early and look, got a beautiful left-hand shift. So is doing really well. But let's concentrate on the next start, because we're now going into the big boat stuff, and we're going to IRC Zero. We've got 17 starters. There's some pretty impressive boats in this fleet. Wouter.
Yes.
Who's the high? I mean, really, the race winners. I believe the race winners are going to come out of Zero, because with the wind going lighter in on Thursday, I can only see the boats like the Cookson 50, the TP 52, that they're slippery boats. Those Cookson 50s, even though they got canting keels, which affects their rating.
Yeah.
We got one in front of us here, which is
Privateer, the American team. So they are really doing a lot of modifications every winter to their boat, making sure they're up to date with the latest technology. Above them is the other Cookson 50 that is with the new Australian owners. And below them the third one, and I think that's the great thing if you're racing three similar boats, you'll be having a reference all along the course, and so you'll be pushing each other to go fast.
Well, interestingly, the American boat on the right of the three is Triple Lindy, which is the only. So the two of the Cooksons have got canting keels, and Triple Lindy is a fixed keel. Now, the canting keel is going to make a big difference in windy reaching conditions. So Triple Lindy could be an interesting choice here. But I have to say, my favourite is down here in front of us, TP52, outsider, Tilmar Hansen from Germany, come all the way German. He loves his offshore racing, and that's my favourite for this race. 5 seconds to the start of IRC Zero.
Yes, but
4 minute gun, not the preparatory gun, not 5 minutes. 4 minutes to the start. No real setup at the moment. Both sailing away from the Pillars of Hercules. And
so they seem to be favouring, and if you look closely, there is a bit more of a patch now towards the start boat end, so I think maybe people are looking to take some advantage of that. So yeah, a quite impressive fleet, but a wide range of boats, So the Albator, that is now the second boat from us from the line, is unbelievably experienced racing crew, and they will be very eager to see the wind build, because they have a rather wide and reachy boat. So whereas they might be a bit sticky in the first part of the race, I think they should be kept a careful eye on for the second part, where there's more reaching, slightly more breeze, and then it could pose a threat to outsider.
Yeah, it looks like these guys going away from us on port tack are, what would you be doing? If you want the inboard end, you're going to be setting yourself up in front of the boats that are coming down the line. But, there's quite a big disparity in size here. We've got some Volvo 70s, Volvo 65. There's disparity in ratings and racing. So it's about keeping your nose clean, isn't it? And having a decent start and being able to go whichever way you want to go.
Yeah, so underneath the Volvo 65 with the blue sails, there's another team that we should follow closely. It's Prospector. US team has a IRC 68. Is one of the predecessors of the Maxi 72s. Very slippery boat, experienced crew. So they could maybe have a little bit of a disadvantage that it's too light early on, but then in the second part of the race it will go well for them.
So the big blue sails out there is that I Love Poland?
No, the blue sails is actually the Austrian project.
It's the Austrian project, and the red one in the distance is I Love Poland. But setting up is the largest boat now is hard on the wind. Prospector to windward. And Lot 99 is setting herself for a good run into the start. You'd want to keep away from those two boats, wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely. With so little wind, there's a big danger of getting stuck in their dirty air, and then there's very little good wind to work with.
Okay, Lot 99 is very close to the line. She's either tacking to get away or she's going to make a big dip again. Down here, close to us, is Privateer, USA. I think she's going to go on port and tack behind these, go out on port tack if she can find a gap.
Ooh, they're all pushing each other up here, so Outsider is keeping the two boats above them up, and she might be pushing them over the line.
So Prospector is definitely over the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely over the line.
15.
I think the Volvo 70 here above Outsider is in real trouble too. Even Outsider is very close.
Will be a recall.
It's a recall. Definitely a recall. Looks like lot 99 and Outsider were very close. I'm listening to the race committee here to see what's happening, but yeah, very competitive start.
Oh yeah, you know, are these guys doing a 2-mile beat, or are they trying to start a 600-mile race?
I know, it's a 600-mile race, but you know, that's what competition is all about, and it's certainly here in this class.
Yeah, every meet that counts here, and so you can see here along the shore it's nip and tuck, and it's all about can you make that cross work when you've tacked and are now on port. I really do hope that the
So in the middle of the course there with the stars on the sail is the current winner of the RORC Caribbean 600, the defending champion, that's Wizard. Not only did she win this race last year, but she also won the Rolex Fastnet race, tacking over onto port.
Yes.
And she's got a tricky manoeuvre there because there is a Volvo 70 on starboard tack.
Yes, and so the key is.
What do you think? What do you think, Wouter? She's been let off. Yeah, she's been let off the hook, Wouter.
Yes, yes. I Love Poland tacked luckily underneath them, because really that wasn't their best maneuver on Wizard. They had troubles with the furling of their specialized upwind sail for these light wind conditions. You know, the code 0 that we were talking about. And now you can see that she's getting the wind in the sails and powering on, but that could have been a much better tack.
Well, she's now really heeled, and you've got to windward of her you've got Sailing Austria, another Volvo 70. There's quite a few Volvo 70s here, and they do a lot of events, don't they? And take. Educate people as well. And on the left hand side, who'd obviously got a very good start and leading the fleet by a long way, is Outsider. Tilma Hansen again. I made a good choice there, didn't I, Wouter?
Yeah, so far. And you know, I know many of their crew, and they're actually quite happy that it's not as wet a race as normal. These TP52s are optimized for light wind med sailing, and they have a lot of their sail controls that are led through the deck, which means that the boat is not all that waterproof. So for Outsider, they're quite happy with the slighter wind, and they'll be slippery and fast in this.
They'll absolutely love these conditions. I sailed with them in the IRC ORC Worlds in Scheveningen last year. I did the offshore race in light airs, and I mean the boat is really slippery and beautiful to sail. But I just checked with the race committee. There was only one boat over the line, so Tilma and his team on Outsider had a fantastic start, and of course they've got some great navigators on the boat. You'll know Ian Moore, Soapy Moore, that's his nickname. I bet you've raced against him many times.
Yes, and I can tell you he's very clever. He knows this course better than anybody else, I would say. He spent a lot of research. It's been rumored that he actually sat on a catamaran at Guadeloupe for a week in one of the previous races before the start to just get a good view of what's going on and trying to understand that all-important lee of Guadeloupe that is make or break in the race so often.
Well, it's two elements we must talk about before we go into the multi-hulls. One is that you can follow the race on the tracker, so go on the website and scroll down the website, you'll see the tracker page, because every boat has a tracking unit on it sending signals via satellite, and you can follow the race on the tracker, and you can also play the virtual game if you want to keep your feet dry. The virtual game run by Virtual Regatta follows exactly the same course. Wouter and I are racing each other, and I know who's going to win. I'm not telling you. And and the game is great fun. There's about 12, maybe it's about 15,000 people playing on it. So it's very popular, and it's a great way to follow the action.
Yeah, you say that's very popular, but I don't think it's very popular with everybody, because the way to win this race, such a race, is to stay up all night. So I know my father plays the race when I'm in the Volvo, and he's up all night. My mother is not thinking it's so popular.
Yeah, but Wouter, you know, if you want to win a race, a yacht race, an ocean race, you probably have to stay up 24 hours a day, whether you do the real thing or the virtual game. So now we come to this is a classic fleet of yachts. I mean, it's just I'm delighted to see we've got some great competition here. We got some French superstar Multihull sailors. We've got Loic Perron, Frank Camas. We got three very, very similar boats, three trimarans, Mod 70 trimarans, and these boats have done thousands of miles. I raced one in 2019 across the Atlantic, 2018. I raced Power Play, and they're really, really exciting machines, and they fly along.
Okay,
4 minutes to the start. 4 minutes to the start.
4 minutes to the start, and so so Power Play is the blue Mod 70 that we can see. Argo is the one in front of under the cliffs here. That's the white one. So they are identical boats, although they are playing a lot with their foils. You can make all different shapes, and we're going towards the foiling generation, and everybody's trying to fly these trimarans. Now you can do that, but you know, a foil like that is creating a lot of drag, because you're dragging a lot of extra bits through the water. So is that going to work in these light wind conditions? We shall see.
Well, Giovanni Soldini is the one on Maserati that has fully foiling opportunity, but he recognised the light conditions not going to work for him. He set the record last year, and had a really close race with the boat that we see in the foreground, Argo. Argo's it's got Frank Camas on board, and the boat behind Argo, the blue trimaran, is being sailed by Pete Cunningham as the owner, and Loic Perron on board. And what was interesting for me was how these boats, not only are they really controllable, we know they capsize, right? But in the right hands, they are ocean greyhounds for sure. And they're all, as you say, fiddling with foils. And in some ways, Power Play hasn't upgraded their foils yet, but Argo had some damage to their foils in early season, and so they've gone back to a similar setup to Power Play. So those two boats would be very, very similar. And then, of course, you've got Maserati in the distance coming down the line, who's fully foiling, and I don't see any way that she's going to do that well. Certainly on handicap she'll get beaten, and maybe even on line honours.
Yeah, so maybe don't forget the 80-foot catamaran as well. You know, the Ultime Emotion 2. It's more set up for single-handed around the world record breaking. But I think, you know, the two Mod 70s might be a little bit too much in each other's hair, and that could be one of the other ones that is going to take the trophy. One of the ones to watch, because it's slightly smaller but well sailed, is the Shockwave, sailed by Jeff Meering. It's one of 63, so slightly smaller trimaran. But look at these two Mod 70s. The starting gun hasn't even gone, and they're already match racing.
Well, there's two French tacticians on board there, so you got Camas versus Perron. And we're coming up to 1 minute to the start of the race, and well, for Power Play and Argo, that's 1 minute to the start, and for Power Play and Argo, the race has already started, I think. And closest to us here is the 80 Ultime Emotion 2, and to windward of them is much more of a cruising catamaran called Fujin, and Fujin is the boat that capsized 2 years ago. And she's come back again and loves this race, absolutely loves it.
Yeah, and how great is that? You know, don't give up, just reassemble your crew, get chipping away and keep going again. So these boats are quite hard to maneuver and to set up. There's quite a tricky maneuver here for Ultime. They're very close to this end of the line.
Get the shouting down here. We got a lot of shouting going on between Fujin and 3, 2, 1, start. And Argo and Maserati have started on port along with Power Play. Power Play's having to duck a boat. So Argo's done well out of that little joust they had. And Maserati is having to duck cruising catamaran that's over on the middle of the course.
Yeah, that's the Allegra. Actually, there's quite a good crew on that. Some of the former Power Play guys, and when Power Play was still concise, so you know, probably a little bit too heavy with these conditions. I think the boat that had the best start is here underneath the cliffs. Ineffable. Didn't break a sweat, didn't get involved with all the tangle between the other boats, and here she is. She has the left side of the course. Okay, she's not the fastest, but look at her, great start.
I bet they feel really happy with themselves. They've outplayed the professionals. She is a, what is it? It's a Melvin, I think it is, a Melvin Ineffable.
Rapido 60.
Rapido, a Morellian Melvin design. I bet that boat would go reasonably well. Coming towards us now, coming to the good speed is
Allegra.
Yeah,
the fast cat, and
she's got some pace. I have
yes,
to say.
and interestingly, look at her Genoa. That is a very big overlapping Genoa. Maybe not quite designed for this upwind work, but sometimes in these light winds conditions, you have to just be creative and find a sail with a big area. She certainly has maneuvered herself to the best part of the course.
So in the picture now with the red vertical stripes is, now this is a boat that's done the race quite a few times, isn't it? Shockwave to Nigel Iron 63. It's now in the hands of a new owner called Shockwave. Christian Durant.
It used to be Paradox.
Paradox, yeah. And to leeward of them is Ultime Emotion 2. She's an 80-footer, ultralight trimaran, and she'll do well in this stuff. I mean, she's got waterline length and she's light, like the Mod 70s. So expect to see good news. Do you think she'll get line honours in this race?
She should, although you know she didn't get off to the best of starts here. She got a bit tangled up here at the beginning with Fuji, who did a better job. But now she has a clear track and really can stretch her legs. I think with the Ultime 80, really the reaching legs actually is where she can do well. So we'll see how that goes. I think whatever is the situation in St. Martin, there is still a long race to go, and that's where she can catch up.
I tell you what's impressive, actually. I think the light winds have brought out the spectators, certainly on the water. There's a, you know, these boats that we've got here are really impressive, and you know, they eat up the miles, and it's great to see boats out there to follow the fleet, which they can follow them all the way around. The first mark being a laid mark, the only laid mark of the course off Barbuda, and of course we got spectators on the hill enjoying the view, and behind us from Shirley Heights, which we can't see. We normally hear the bongo drums, but not today. So as we wave goodbye, and we thank the race team for great control of the race start. As you saw, it was incredibly competitive, and obviously everything seems to have gone well, Wouter.
Yes, but now, so the start was the hectic part of for any crew. Personally, when I have started, you know, it's almost like a sigh of relief because it's the end of all 4 days of preparation, and you can finally, you know, just settle into the racing. But it's a long way to go, and I'm looking at these trimarans, and I'm actually surprised. You know, the speed is not all that fast. You know, this is the wind has gone down a little bit, and the tricky thing with these trimarans is they're so hard to tack. So that unlike the other boats that were really hugging the shore, these guys are trying to do the more straight lines. And as we can see, power play further offshore. I think they have to bite the bullet and get over to the left because it really looks light out offshore.
Well, yes, and you're quite right, because you can see Ultimate Emotion, who has started miles behind them, is getting the left-hand shift. The helicopter just going over the top of the 80-footer, and even now she's cut back that lead. If they tacked out to sea, I think you'll find Ultimate Emotion will probably be ahead of them. But there's a long way to go, Wouter. I thank you very much, and Wouter Verbraak, weather guru and navigator, and working for Sevenstar Yacht Transport, and Louis and Miles. Louis, you went missing. What happened to you? Eh?
Well, as the people will know when they listen to this recording, unfortunately the internet here in Antigua on both networks that we were using decided to go down to dial-up. So you'll be watching a recording of this right now if you're listening to this. But what a cracking start to the 12th edition of the RORC Caribbean 600. It's only just started. I heard Eddie saying earlier on, we've got full coverage on the RORC mini site. And it's going to be a fascinating battle, particularly through, as Wouter was explaining to us previously, through the lees and the funnels that are created by these spectacular 11 islands around the course. So stay tuned to the RORC Caribbean 600, and we will watch the drama unfold.
Thank you, Louis. Yes, and also thanks to all the spectators who came along today, and of course we've got over 75 volunteers that involved in running this race, so it's a huge, great big thank you from the Royal Ocean Racing Club, and to all of those people who are logging in to watch the start, and as Louis said, a recording of the start. Thank you for listening in, and we look forward to giving you more information as the race progresses. Thanks again. Bye bye.